One thing you might notice if you look back in history is that, especially for kids that grew up in the 50s or the 60s or the 40s or the 30s, is that when they were roughly 5 or 6 years old, they were given a knife. Even in the 1800s or the 19th century, early 1800s, or all through the 1800s, when kids were, especially when they had lots of chores to do, and the chore required them to go out and cut stuff, their dad would give them a knife, teach them, give them a quick lesson on how to use it and be safe, and they were expected to take care of it and not lose it. And usually, if they lost the knife because it was a valuable item, that they paid the heavy consequences, I guess you could say. So, kids were, like I said, 6, 7, 8 years old. They were expected to have a knife and use it. When they went to school, they brought a knife to sharpen their pencils. They didn't have the normal pencil sharpeners we have in schools now. So it was an expected thing, especially taking a knife to school. Nowadays, of course, that's all changed, and people are afraid to give their kids knives. Even the girls, like this is specific, I guess this applies to all kids, but, girls were taught with big knives early on in the kitchen how to cut food. They're always next to their mom, preparing the dinner and whatever other meals they had, and so they would have to sit and cut whatever food they had with knives. And again, 6, 7 years old is when they started. So me, I like to, I gave my kids knives usually about when they're 8 or 9 is when I started giving them pocket knives as a gift, or other knives as a gift. And one of the things I wanted to do was do that, to my nieces and nephews, mostly because maybe freaking out their parents if you give them a knife, but just, to show them I'm the cool uncle, right? Bribe them a little. So, this kind of started me on this quest to find the best knife for giving to a kid that's not yours. You could also, obviously, you could apply this to your own kids, and I do. But this is for giving a knife to a kid that's not your own kid. So I have a list of requirements here, and these are, things that I look for. I know somebody's going to say, why don't you give them a Mora, because, fixed blade knives are generally safer, and I do agree with that. However, sometimes I do give Moras to kids, but for the most part, I was looking for a pocket knife, something that they could carry around with them a lot more. And so these are the things I look for. Remember, this is a gift, so I guess the last thing I list is around $10 or less. I don't really want to spend more than that, even though I can. And then I want strong springs. That I'll show you what the springs are if you don't know in a second. I want to be able to put a lanyard, or I want a loop on it, or some method that I can tie a string onto it. And I'll show you why in a second. Well, the reason is so that I put a string on it, and then I put a clip at the end of the string, and the purpose is for them to tie it, or to clip it to their belt or their belt loop, and so that they don't lose it. And then teach them how not to lose it. And then, so that's important, having something that you can attach to themselves, because they're kids. The other thing is, I do like to have a can opener just to teach them how to use can openers. And if it has a can opener on it, I guess you don't have to give them one with a can opener, but if it has one on it, it better work, right? I've actually, with scouts, they have a new knife, and they bought it at Walmart, and it has a can opener on it, and I give them a can, and they can't open the can, and it's like, okay, well, maybe they just don't know how to open a can with it. So I try to use it, and I realize quickly that they either they put the can opener in the wrong spot so that it can't work properly, or it's just a bad design and it just doesn't work. So can opener works. I want blades that fold into their slots straight, and that I don't have to guide them. I'll show you a bad example of that. And of course, I want it to hold a decent edge. I mean, obviously, with a $10 knife, you can't expect, or you can't have the world, but something better than just made in Chinese, 440 stainless. However, that's, again, this is a knife for a kid, so that one, it's okay if it's not great, but it better not be really soft. So here's another thing that I do when I give a knife away to a kid that's not mine, and to one of my kids, but this is focused on other kids that aren't my kids. So here's a list, or here's a note. So what I do is I type this out, or it's already I typed it out once, and I print it off, and I put it in with the gift of the knife. And I usually also buy a little clip, and I buy the string for it, and then I give them this note and ask them to read it. And chances are they're kids, and they're not going to maybe not pay attention, but that's something that you watch for, see how serious they take it. But anyway, so I give them this note, have them read it with their parents, and then let them experiment after that. But you can read it. It's kind of just, this helps them with knife rules and stuff. And obviously, I change it a little if I'm giving it to a girl, but I like to give this note. All right, let's look at some examples. Now this is a Helle. I don't know how you pronounce it. Helle. It's a Norwegian knife. I bought the blade, and then I put the handle on. Yeah, this is not a pocket knife, obviously, but I really like this knife, and it's been really great for me. For kids, again, somebody's gonna say, "Why don't you give them a Mora?" So I bought this for my son. He just turned 11. I probably bought it for him when he was 9. And I bought it for my older kids as well. I have a bunch of other ones, and I just bought my 16-year-old daughter for Christmas a much nicer Mora. So I really like Moras, and the 511 is probably the perfect one for kids, just because it has this guard right here, and the blade is not really big. It's fairly small, and anyways, and these are about $10. So the price is right, and the blade it holds a great edge, and it's great for teaching them a lot, especially wood carving and safety and a lot of other things that they can use a knife for, and it's easy to sharpen. But I'm looking for pocket knives, so let's look at some bad examples of pocket knives. This is one that was probably $5 in China, or $5 at Walmart. I mean, made in China. One thing you notice, if you can see it, is that like a fish scaler and a saw. The saw, of course, is horrible. It doesn't work at all. It's like, look, I can do this to it, and it doesn't hurt. The fish scaler is probably rougher than that. The blade is really thin, and so you're going to break it off. Of course, it's set stainless china. Usually if the blade says stainless china on it, I don't want it. And then the big thing about this is that like this, when I close the knife edge, it rubs against this. And these two, they don't, like, see, so this one crosses over to the wrong spot, so I have to move it over to get it to close right if I can. Never does. The scales are loose. This is a like this. This is gonna break. This is so thin. Anyways, it just reeks of bad quality. The scissors are, I don't know, maybe the scissors might work. They're pretty thin though. So this is a bad example. One thing that I did find a knife just from and I'll show you what I've done in the past. So, well, here, I'll show you another example of what I'm not looking for. You get a lot of these knives. Now, this is just a cheap Chinese one that I got for free from somebody. But the idea is it's a single blade folder. And there, you know, I'm not saying there's anything bad with single blade folders, and you know, you get a Spyderco or a high quality brand, and you get a high quality brand, and you know, they're pretty nice knives. But for a kid's knife, I'd rather get something a little different. Plus, the biggest thing, I mean, it has a belt clip, but it doesn't have something to tie a lanyard onto, like this does. You know, I'm looking for something like this at the very least. So, you know, this is, I'm not looking for a knife like this. In fact, one time I did buy a knife for a kid, you know, my niece, just because I couldn't find what I was looking for at the store, and I didn't have time to order anything on Amazon because it was like right then, and I regretted it. I don't think it's a good choice for a kid's first knife, right? So another option I found, like here's a Gerber clutch. This is a multi-tool that's just really small, and it's a great little tool, but for a first knife for a kid, I don't think it's a good option. The blade is just really small, and I think it's too small. It's hard to maintain for a kid. I think this is a great tool, but I don't think it's a good first knife for a kid to use. They need something a little more conventional. And so at one point, so I found this. This is what I found. This is a Ruko, and I'll show you an Amazon picture of it in a second. I don't know if you can see, I took a metal engraver tool and put my son's initials on it, and then I actually bought one of these for all my kids, put their initials on it. Then it has there's a lanyard hole, and it holds the string, and then the string goes to a clip, and then they tie this on the belt. The string's long enough that it's the length of their arm, so that they can clip it on their belt, and then they can take it out of their pocket and have it still clipped through their belt. That's the idea. So it's still clipped to their belt, and they can use it while it's clipped to their belt, so they can't lose it. That's the idea. The Ruko, the one thing, you know, it is pretty nice. The blade is at least twice as thick as this cheap one. In fact, if you look at it, see how much there's a big thickness difference. And it's like this copied this, right? I mean, almost exactly, right? Here's the fish scaler, here's a saw, here's a blade. That's exactly the same order. So it's like everything in this tool is in this one, and they copied it. And maybe they copied another knife, but this is a much higher quality. Even though it's still cheap, it's a lot higher quality. This does work. I've used it. I've never used this one. Look, exactly the same design, but it is on the right spot. If it was like in the middle, or if this was in the middle, it wouldn't work at all. Or if it was on the other side, it wouldn't work. And I've seen that. So this one, this is sorry, this is much thicker than this one was. So this is, and you could feel it snapping, and then all the blades fall in place. So this, you know, and it's about $10, and I found it online, right? I found one of them in the store. I bought it for my son, and then tried it out, and then I started buying them online because I couldn't find them in the stores anymore. However, the one thing about this is that it does. My oldest son, the first one I bought for my oldest son, who's 15 now, I probably bought it for him when he was 9 or 10 again, and anyways, the springs are wearing out, and what the spring is when you open a blade or any of the tools, right? There's this part right here. It's a spring, and what it does is it puts tension on the blade so that you'll hear it pop out, and that's the spring doing that. And so my oldest son, some of his springs are wearing out, and so what that does is it makes all the tools are loose. So this is a pretty good quality one, but it does wear out over time. And so I was kind of looking for something better than this. The trick is that at first I thought, and this saw does work. That's a key feature. It's a good sharp saw, even though I'm not pushing hard, but this saw does work. It's not as good as my Victoria Knox, but it's still pretty good. But anyways, I thought, my first knife I had I had a saw because it was a Victoria Knox, and I used the saw a lot, and so I thought that the saw was really important. So I started looking for one. That's what I wanted, one with a saw, and so that's what led me to this. So let's go look at some other options. So if you look at this first picture, it's a Victoria Knox Fieldmaster, and I guess the reason I'm showing you this is, first of all, this is what I consider the optimal pocket knife, right? It has all the tools I think are great to have on a pocket knife, and not more than that. So I think that if it's bigger than this, that it's too much. This is the perfect size and the perfect amount. So if it's bigger than this, it's too much. And then if it's smaller than this, you're having some compromises. And it's not saying that it's bad if it's smaller than this, but this is the perfect size, I think. So moving on, here's the Ruko. And again, this shows it's less than $10. I guess they're having a sale or something, because every time I bought it on Amazon, it's been at least $10, maybe $12. So the Amazon, don't look at the Amazon prices and think they're great. The prices change up and down for this, and this is hard to find on Amazon sometimes. And then, so one time I couldn't find this one. I didn't have time. I went to the sporting goods store for one of my my nephews, and I bought him a Recruit just because, and it was about this exact price. I didn't have time. The birthday was that day. He was from out of town. He was leaving the next day. I wanted to give him a knife for I think it was his 10th birthday. So I got him this one, and it was pretty good, it's a Victoria Knox, so it's the highest quality. And again, I was trying not to buy Victoria Knoxes for them just because I wanted to get something a little lesser quality, so that they'd have motivation to go up. So they would get a knife that they can beat around, and then they could, when they saved up their own money, they have more ownership in it, and then they can go buy a better knife, and this would be a good option. But anyways, I bought this. I think it was a great option for this. And even though it doesn't have a saw and it doesn't have scissors, this is kind of what made me realize, well, maybe I don't need the saw and scissors. So what happens if I don't have the saw and scissors? So one of the things I was talking with some friends online, and one of my friends mentioned to use one of these knives, or he was saying that this design right here, that it's a proven design, and kids have used this for years. And so, and it reminded me, so if you look at the Boy Scout knife on the left, the Boy Scout knife, my dad had one of those. In fact, my dad actually had both of these types of knives. But growing up, I remember taking his Boy Scout knife when I was 8 years old, and I went on a Cub Scout outing without my dad, and I tried to sharpen it on a rock, and I totally messed it up. I don't know why he let me. I guess I learned. But that Boy Scout, so that design, and I kind of give it a little history. If the history's wrong, don't blame me. It could be wrong. But from what I understand, Imperial started this design around 1910, which was the beginning of the Boy Scouts. And then Camillus kicked in around the same for 1946 to start making them. And if you look at the U.S. knife, or the demo knife, that they used to issue this to U.S. troops, and it was about 1945 when they started issuing these. And anyways, both of these designs, to me, they do offer everything that I'm looking for, right? They offer the blade, a good blade size. They offer can openers that work. They offer a couple extra tools. They don't have a saw and they don't have scissors. But it's motivation to go for the kid to maybe eventually go pick out the nicest, the Victorinox that I showed you earlier, the Fieldmaster that I think is the best, right? So it's not the absolute best, but to me it's a great compromise. Now, if you get one of these older ones, so this design is what I started looking for, right? And so, again, my friend recommended that that there's one that Marbles makes. Now, this is what he recommended. So Marbles makes it, and it's made in China, and the blade is stainless blade from China. And the Smoky Mountain Knife Works makes it for less, or sells it for less than 10. I don't know what I've never bought from them, so I don't know what their shipping is. But so I decided to give it a try. So I looked on Amazon. Here's the Amazon link, or the Amazon, what it looks like on Amazon. And this one says it's 12. And again, I bought it for 10 on Amazon, so the price goes up and down. But I bought this on Amazon, and I've been testing it out for a couple months now, using it all the time, and I think it's a great option. So let me show you what I got. So here's the one I bought on Amazon, and again, this is the Marbles one. See from the blade. So it's what I'm looking for. It has stiff springs. The blade I like the blade's shape with more of a belly here and a little bit more, instead of just more flat. I've used the can opener many times, and it works. It's not sharp right here. I was worried about that, but then when I tried it out, it works, so can't argue. I've used the bottle opener to open bottles. I have used this to scrape stuff instead of the screwdriver. And then it has this awl, and actually I found out, freak accident, didn't have any other option, that this tip is the perfect size for my glasses. The Phillips screwdriver, or the Phillips screw on my glasses. This will get in there and tighten them up. I've had my screw fell out once, and I didn't know what to do, and I was out, I was camping, and I didn't have any small screwdrivers with me, and this did it. So I've been really happy with this. The springs are tight. Everything works. Everything falls into place. It has this big lanyard hole. And another thing, I guess, about these, what I'm looking for is, for kids, you give them something like this or like this, to sharpen it, where it has a V block in there, and then you just pull the blade across. Right? This is all it takes to sharpen it, and it stays pretty sharp. It actually, this is really sharp right now. So if you might see my little helper. She's very busy. She's 3. Anyways, so here, since she's holding it over, so I'll just tie this right onto this and do the string on it, just like the same. And I can engrave their names maybe somewhere on here, or their initials. So this, to me, is the best option right now from what I've seen. So I like the Marbles example that I showed you, but it's not the only example out there, right? For one, you could still go to the Boy Scouts, and they still sell a Boy Scout example. I don't think it's as good as the one my dad has, or the one they had they sold back in the 40s and 50s and 30s and 20s. But it's, compared to the marbles, it's probably about the same. So, but there's also like, here's a colonial knife. It's exactly it's $30. Here's a Camillus. It's actually a pretty cheap one, it looks like. $22. The Schrade, that's a good quality brand. And then Boker, I don't know anything about Boker, but I just saw this on Amazon. But there's other options for this design, So if you don't want to buy the marbles, you can pick something else. Obviously, you can pick whatever you want, but this style, I've kind of narrowed it down to this style of knife that I think is perfect for giving to a kid for his first knife, or her first knife, even. Gender, I don't think doesn't really matter with this case. In fact, I've given my Ruko makes a knife that's similar in this style as well. That was about $8 as well when I bought it for my daughter, who lost it once. And then that's where I started tying. I tied a lanyard onto it, told her to clip it to her belt loop. She didn't. She put it on a log, found out that knives will walk off, and out in the middle of the wilderness. So I did eventually buy her another one to replace it. But other companies make these. I think this style is great for a kid. It's been used for decades for kids, and it's proven itself. So if you're looking for a knife for a kid, here's a great example. Thanks for watching.